Welcome back. Now let's check out what's playing out in the commodities market. And join us for this, we have Dumebi Oluwole, is a senior economist, joining us right here. Dumebi, it's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Lydie. It's great to be here.
Great to have you as usual. And a lot has happened since the last time we spoke.
Yeah.
We have 47 trillion. That's a key word at this point, and that's the proposed budget for 2025. We've had a lot of conversations about the benchmarks.
Yes.
And I'm getting really nervous, when it comes to oil prices.
Yes.
$75, that's the benchmark there for 2025.
Yes.
But I'm seeing weakness in that market.
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
I mean, what I see is volatility.
Right.
And no country can plan with volatility. Right, so whether it's weakness or volatility, there's still a question mark there on how stable, government revenue will be benchmarking oil prices at around where they've benchmarked it at. And right now, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what will drive oil prices in 2025. But what we do know now is that there is some level of escalation with the Russia-Ukraine war. And that might prop up prices, but temporarily, right? Because we've seen that trend over the last couple of years, and we do know that there's a high and then there's a low. Then you also consider the cartel, that's OPEC now, being quite conservative, right, with oil supply, because at the same time they're also trying to keep prices at a particular benchmark as well, so that they're able to break even, and member countries are able to generate some substantial revenue. Regardless of that, then you also consider some level of like the Israel-Hamas war as well. But again, it goes up, it comes down. So market sentiment towards oil prices right now extremely volatile. And the key thing here is that rather than benchmarking Nigeria's government revenue towards, like oil prices being volatile, the conversation should have always been, and right now should even be a lot more around how we can diversify our revenue base, right? So it's a still conversation, but the truth is that we've gotten to the point where we can no longer sideline that conversation. Oil prices, right, the global market, even global growth is projected to still remain tepid, right? So what that means is that in a global environment where demand is pretty slow from China right now, interest rates are still likely to remain high. They're going to fall, but at a very slow pace. But what this means is that the US dollar could likely remain strong, and that affects, exchange currency pressures, not only for Nigeria, but across Africa. So what this means is that commodity dependency, right, has now become, there's a huge question mark there, and countries need to start adding some value and then diversifying their revenue base. And Nigeria right now sits at the core of that conversation.
Right, it's quite interesting you say that, because we're always talking about oil prices, benchmarking oil prices, and nobody's really talking about diversification. Like, let's look at other resources that we can actually profit from. But looking at that market now, we have geopolitics that comes up, supply disruption, it props up the price. They now have China demand realities, bringing us back down. So is this what's still going to be playing on in 2025?
I mean, from all indications, because as economists, we predict the future based on what is happening now, and from all indications, that's going to be the case, at least up until the first quarter of 2025 or in the first half of 2025. China's economy, there's some level of stimulus going in, but we haven't seen that significantly ramp up GDP growth. And if demand doesn't significantly bump from China, what that means is that the demand for a lot of global commodities is going to remain slow or remain low. And what that means for prices is that prices are going to be bearish. And if prices are bearish, the exporting countries would not be able to make as much money. And so you find them trying to leverage more on volume than the actual price itself. And remember, in the global commodities market, prices are locked in the future. So they trade in forward contracts. And what that means is that if you lock in a price for today that is lower than the price, that maybe in the next few weeks or next few months, you're going to make a lot less money. And what if the prices that you lock in today are also, even if they're higher, the chances are that if prices are going to fall and there's a market expectations that prices are going to fall, what it means that prices are going to fall. So there's that expectation loop as well. So that you find that there's a lot of merry-go-round going on in the global commodities space. I mean, over the last couple of months, I think for the past 2 months, we've seen grain prices increase, still up on the back of, the Russia-Ukraine war. And what that means for a country like Nigeria is that we import a lot of these commodities, right? Like wheat, cereals, sugar. And, if the prices are higher, our import, bill on those commodities are increasing. And when you look at it, when you try to net it off with Nigeria's balance of trade, you see that we're not producing enough to sell enough for key commodities like oil, and the prices of that commodity is lower, right? So what it means, we're not generating enough FX. Then you now put it side by side with the commodities that we're importing, and their prices are rising. So what it means is that the FX that we're generating, we're also spending a lot more to bring in more commodities into the country. So when you net it off, you realize that we're spending a lot more than we're bringing in, than we're generating, right? And that raises a huge question on Nigeria's balance of trade, our FX stability, FX reserves, and a lot of other questions on the key things that now affect the domestic commodities market, because at the end of the day, nobody really cares about what is going on at the helm of affairs until it begins to affect their pockets. And right now we're beginning to see that sharp transmission effect from what happens on policy scale and even the global scale in terms of what is happening with the people, and key things, food prices and the exchange rates.
Right, and looking at a Trump presidency, Trump is all about drill, baby, drill at this point. So, going into 2025, we're seeing expectations of more output.
Yes,
coming out from the US.
Yes.
So, I guess it's safe to say the prices will still be pressured.
Yes, I mean, you're not wrong there, and to be very honest, I will say that we most likely might see some level of revisions, right, with Nigeria's budget. They might not change the budget assumptions, but we might see some level of revisions going into 2025. Because the reality on ground is that we do know the kind of presidency that the Trump administration is gonna have, right? We know Trump's stance on crude oil production. We know Trump's stance on geopolitics. And again, it's quite dicey to say this is exactly what is going to happen. But from all inclinations, we do know that oil production is going to increase, and that's going to affect price. But at the same time, we do know that OPEC is going to be conservative, right? So what that means is that supply from OPEC might not be as high. So it might somewhat net off. We saw that happen in 2020, right, when we saw an increase in oil production from the US, and OPEC was also cutting its supply. So there was some level of, a matchup basically happening there in terms of supply. Then there's another factor to consider, Chinese demand. We don't expect China's demand to be low all through 2025. So there are expectations that the stimulus packages might begin to, bump up, GDP growth. So maybe at the second half of 2025, we might see China's demand actually begin to pick up, and that might support prices, right? But who knows? If prices are falling again, we might see like a supply cut or something. Then again, I think the important thing here, basically, is also to look at the geopolitical tensions as well. So with the Trump administration, we've seen a lot of analysis coming up to say that the Kremlin and also Ukraine, even Israel and Hamas as well, we might see some level of decline, right, in escalations for the war with the Trump presidency. If that happens, we expect that there'll be some calm in oil prices, right? Primarily, we might not see strong stability, but if that happens, if that is the case, scenario is that oil prices will likely remain around $70, $75 per barrel. And if that is the case, Nigeria, maybe there's some level of safe bet, but better safe than sorry, right? The important thing is that we are realistic with our assumptions, and we do not hedge the entire country's revenue on one commodity. So that takes me back to the conversation I had about diversifying our revenue base. It has become more imperative right now that we do that, not because we cannot enjoy oil or we're not doing enough to produce more oil, because truth be told, the entire conversation around fossil fuels is not going to die anytime soon. We're transitioning to renewable energy, but that transition is going to take some time. Let's be very honest. And Nigeria's revenue is still pretty much hinged on crude oil. So for that conversation, it means that we can still try to make a lot more if we produce a lot more. But again, diversifying our revenue base has to be
very important. I need to see more commodities up there, and maybe one of them, knock off oil. At some point.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but I mean,
at some point in the future. Thank you so much, Dumebi Oluwole. It was great to have your perspective. You're a senior economist joining us right here for the commodities market.
Thank you.
All right, so that's it from me on Business Morning. Markets are open now. We'll give you an update at 1 p.m. on Business Incorporated to see how your money is performing. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.